Fretted stringed instruments are unique in the sense that chords can be communicated in more than one way. So not just traditional Western notation or tablature. In addition, we can also use chord charts, or maybe more accurately, chord diagrams. These chord diagrams give us a physical snapshot of the instrument and show us where specifically to place our fingers on the strings. Chord diagrams consist of grids constructed from 6 vertical lines and any number of horizontal lines. The vertical lines have a direct correlation or representation of the 6 strings of the guitar. Typically, we find these diagrams with the leftmost line representing the 6th string of the guitar, the low E string, and the rightmost line representing the high E string of the guitar, or the 1st string. The subsequent strings that are in between correlate directly to the remaining strings of the guitar. The horizontal lines represent the frets. Now, this can vary a little bit, but generally 4 frets or more, 4 or 5 frets, I guess, are represented on the diagram. But because not all chords span multiple frets, a good example might be like your A minor chord, or I don't know, maybe your E major chord. Those only use 2 frets on the guitar. It's not necessary to include additional frets beyond the frets that contain fretted notes. However, usually a few extra frets are shown just to give us a little bigger picture and a little more context of what chord we should be playing. Now, if the chord is in 1st position, meaning played at the 1st fret, it's common practice to make sure that the top horizontal line is maybe a bit bolder, thicker, heavier, blacker. This represents the nut of the guitar. It makes it very clear that we are in 1st position. Typically, black dots will be placed within the diagram to indicate which strings need to be fretted and at which fret. Now, there are a lot of variations to these. Sometimes they are not opaque dots, but clear dots. Sometimes they'll include which finger to use, so a fingering will be built into the diagram. And also, sometimes you'll find maybe a different shape or symbol, like a square perhaps, to represent the root of the chord. Now, if you ever check out Ted Green, a great guitar player, in any of the books he's written, like Modern Chord Progressions and Chord Chemistry, he takes this idea of basic chord diagrams a little bit further and actually is a system that shows some melodic movement within the chord shape itself. Maybe more on that in a later video. Okay, great. So how do we deal with chords that contain open strings, which a lot of standard chords, cowboy chords in 1st position, do in fact contain open strings? Well, there's a simple way to communicate whether the string is played or not. At the top of the diagram, really above the diagram, above the nut, we can list either a clear circle, indicating that the open string will be played, or an X to indicate that we will not play that particular string. Pretty obvious, I think. What about chords that are, maybe somewhere else on the neck of the guitar? Good question. So if we are moving out of 1st position, it's important to indicate which fret we are playing at, usually which fret position. So probably where the 1st finger lives. So in other words, if there is a chord that is where our 1st finger is living on the 5th fret, that would be in 5th position, and we should indicate this either with a Roman numeral or maybe just the Arabic numeral 5, so that we know that we're in the 5th position. If we are moving outside of 1st position, it's a good chance that we're going to be barring some strings. Bars are usually indicated by either a horizontal line, a straight horizontal line covering more than one dot, or possibly connecting 2 dots to show that, okay, all of the strings between the 6th string and the 1st string need to be held down with the 1st finger. Oftentimes, you'll find a curved line covering 2 or more dots. So it varies a little bit, but should be pretty intuitive. If you're not exactly sure if you should be barring or not, well, play the chord. Does it sound weird? Maybe you should try barring. Okay, so final thoughts. Chord diagrams, awesome. They are a great way to communicate how to play and where to play a particular chord on the guitar. These are great because it takes pretty much no time at all to learn how to read them. They're an extremely useful tool. They're not exactly the be-all, end-all. I think they should be used in conjunction with standard notation in chord symbols. Things like E7, right? So we can give a name to the chord we're playing, and we can also look at the notation to see the intervals within each note. This gives us a really strong understanding of how the notes in the chord relate to one another. So yes, it's great to look at a chord diagram and learn and memorize shapes, physical shapes of chords and how they fit on the guitar. It's also very important to take a look at the notation to see how the notes in the chords relate to one another, and to look at the chord symbol, the name of the chord, so you can start to associate that particular sound with the title. This just makes it easier when it comes to transcribing or writing out a transcription or charts, maybe for other musicians, or simply just communicating chords. So spend some time with chord diagrams. If you're already familiar with reading chord diagrams, take a look at the notation or tablature that might be in chord symbol that might be accompanying your chord diagram. So build on to the existing knowledge with the rest of the information that's on the piece of music. All right, see ya.